Bubble tea, the most recent craze in Hong Kong. They wait 10, 30, 60 minutes for a single drink. 30 Hong Kong dollars too, that's more than some fast food. What makes them so popular? Black sugar? Fresh milk? Rich tea? Or simply cause they are delicious?
So today we'll be reviewing the iPhone XS Max camera and buying some bubble tea. Hopefully you guys like that introduction. We haven't shot the documentary yet, but you know, this should be pretty good. It's Apple. If you guys only want to see the photo review portion of this video, you can click at this time code. If not, we're going to start off by talking about the video features. Let's go.
We decided to film this review around the recent craze in Hong Kong, bubble tea. Did you know that a cup of bubble tea is equivalent to 300 plus calories, which is around the same amount as French fries? Crazy, right?
So if you look at the specs of this guy, there's not much different to like the iPhone 10. And this iPhone XS Max has the same specs as the iPhone XS. So if you look at it from like purely specs point of view, you're gonna go like, you know, it's not that much different. But when you shoot with it, you will notice a difference.
What makes the videos and photos that much better than the iPhone X is the new A12 Bionic processor. This gives us what Apple is calling Smart HDR, which gives you much more dynamic range in your shots.
There's more people waiting here than for the iPhone XS. Sorry. Wow. You know, if you didn't look at the signs, you would probably think this is the line for the iPhone XS, but it's a line for bubble tea. That's 30 Hong Kong dollars. You can get a decent meal of that price. All for that Instagram worthy photo.
Okay, maybe not a decent meal, but you get what I mean. Okay, if you want to hear the specs, it's pretty much the same as the iPhone X, but here you go. 4K at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, 1080p at 30, 60, 120, and 240 frames per second, and 720p. There you go.
It's chaotic here. You think going to work is hard? Getting bubble tea is hard. It's almost our turn. Just waited 5 years. Hi, can I get the brown sugar boba milk or creamy mousse? If you're ever in Hong Kong and you want to try this, or Taiwan, this is from Taiwan if you didn't know, I'm going to tell you if it's worth it. Probably not. But yeah, that's Hong Kong for you. But if you look at the specs, like I said, of the iPhone XS or XS Max, you're not gonna notice that much of a difference. But what Apple has done with both their videos and photo features is they've added Smart HDR. So with the new A12 Bionic processor, blah, 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 tech stuff, they've basically created a higher dynamic range. From tests so far, highlights looking pretty good. Shadows maintaining a little bit more detail. But yeah, we'll see.
Video quality is pretty decent. Aside from the increased dynamic range, the video is also very sharp. I mean, most of the footage that you're watching now are in 4K 24 frames per second, and they are just astonishing. Color rendition, sharpness, detail, there's really not much to complain about.
Okay, finally got it after 30 minutes of waiting. You know, when this shop first opened, people were queued up for an hour just to like get this bubble tea. What's so special about it? They don't have tea in it. That's right, they don't have tea. Yes, it's not called bubble tea, it's called bubble milk. So what they do is like they have cheese inside, it's sweet. So instead of tea, they use black sugar and milk and things that will give you diabetes. I mean, the iPhone XS and XS Max, it shoots the same frame rates, same resolution, 1080p, 4K. I mean, it shoots 60 frames per second, 24, 25, 120 frames per second, 240 frames per second slow motion. And it's great on that, but if you were expecting it to shoot more than 240 frames per second slow motion, you're dreaming, my friend.
Although the slow motion footage at 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second isn't the sharpest footage out there, but if you're just uploading it to social media, it is more than good enough. You'll see a bit of RA, but nothing too bad.
So 30 minutes worth of wait, is it worth it? It sort of is, because Taiwanese bubble tea, it's rare in Hong Kong. But anyways, the iPhone XS Max's camera, it's still 1080p, but now you can do 60p, so you can do a bit of slow motion. But yeah. Wait, what? How many of these do they have?
Okay, I think you're probably getting a bit sick of bubble tea by now. Let's finish off the video portion of this review with a few more shots.
The last thing about the video features of the iPhone XS and XS Max is the stereo mic. So if you listen to my voice now, it's a lot more crisp and richer than it was on the iPhone X. If you put on your earbuds though, you'll hear, if I talk on this side, if I talk on this side, you'll hear that stereo effect. And overall, I feel like the sound quality is improved quite a bit, both on the front and rear facing camera. But enough about videos, let's talk about the photos. I was waiting for the prawn to jump up so I can get a nice shot of it. Oh, the shrimp to jump up, but never mind. But yeah, like I said, the camera spec-wise, not much different. You got bigger sensors, so in low light, sort of low light now, it's twilight right now, you should get a little bit less noise. It's got the same megapixel count. The lens is slightly wider and slightly more telephoto on the telephoto end. But it's the bigger sensor, 30% bigger sensor that will give you a bit more, not much bokeh, but it'll give you a bit more better low light performance. So let's just test it out, test out the detail, saturation, all that good stuff.
I know a photo of Bak Choy doesn't get more Chinese than this, but if you look closely at the photo, you can see just how much detail the iPhone XS Max is pulling from this photo. Sharp and detailed. If you look at the shot, the color's a little bit tricky. You got some warm lights coming in from the market, you got the blue skies, and then you got some other lights here and there. So despite it being so tricky, the color rendition is still rather nice. Skin tones are maintained pretty well. I mean, if you zoom in at the light bulbs on top of his head, you can see just how much detail is still there. Nothing is really blown out.
I really do think with this camera, you'll see a huge improvement from, iPhone 8, especially iPhone 7. But even from the iPhone 10, simply because of the Smart HDR function, that increase in dynamic range. Whereas if you use an iPhone 10, the highlights might be completely blown out. With this, you still maintain the detail. And the shadows, you keep a little bit more, but really it's the highlight, that fallout, that transition from highlight to midtones. It's really spot on, really cool.
Okay, interesting shot here. So I took this on both the wide-angle lens and the telephoto lens. In my opinion, the wide-angle lens produces sharper images with less noise as well. And overall, it's just a little bit more detailed, I think.
So detail on this, pretty damn good. Colors, as you expect, also very good. But is this a low light camera? You've got a bigger sensor, so in theory, bigger pixels, less noise. And you've got IS on this, on both lenses. So let's find out if it's any good.
The low light shots are pretty impressive. You're not gonna see in the dark with this camera, but if you look closely, there's not much color noise. Yes, of course there is noise, but it is very acceptable. Along with the optical image stabilization, you can get more than usable shots in low light.
With the IS and the bigger sensor, you'll notice that it's maintaining its detail pretty well. And not much noise, not much color noise at least, which is really the thing that stands out on mobile phones. And since I'm taking a photo of this, just a week or two ago, we had the strongest typhoon in Hong Kong history. And windows were getting blown out, roads were cracking. I'm not kidding. But this managed to stay up. So just because it doesn't look so good doesn't mean it ain't strong. That doesn't make sense, but all right. So one of the most hyped up aspect of the iPhone XS's camera, or XS Max, is the new portrait mode. We have the portrait mode on the iPhone X, but what makes this so special is you can change the aperture digitally after you've taken the photo. So just like last year, we're gonna compare it to an actual DSLR. This time, it's my own personal 5D Mark II and a 24mm 1.4. It's a close enough focal length, and we're gonna test out the bokeh. Let's do it.
Litung Avenue used to be a really traditional, old-looking Hong Kong street, but recently they've revamped it and modernized it. Is it the same? No, but it's still beautiful with all the new lights and decoration and the bokeh you can get from the street. This is a place people visit very often for Instagram photos. So we thought, what better place to test out the bokeh, the portrait mode, than here. So with the new portrait mode that's specifically only available to iPhone XS and the XS Max is the ability to change the aperture, and you get the ability to change it from f1.4 all the way to f16. Now you might think, oh, they're just applying a blur filter to the background, but it's not as simple as that. If you look carefully, as you get further back, the blur becomes progressively more. And it's not just a blur filter either. If you look at the bokeh on the top left, there's a direction to which the bokeh is being blurred, which makes the photo a little bit more DSLR-like, more realistic. Okay, if you look at the extreme f1.4, it might be a little bit too much. Overkill. But if you stopped it down a little bit, it can become hard to distinguish from first glance.
So you can also change the aperture with the front-facing camera now. So let's give this a shot.
And yes, the portrait mode is still there for the selfie camera, and I believe you can still adjust the aperture in the front-facing camera. So overall, is the new camera that much better? No. Spec-wise, I've been telling you throughout this whole video, it's not better. But it's about how everything works together as a phone. The processor, the camera, the software, it all just works so perfectly well together to create stunning images and videos with better dynamic range, better detail sharpness while maintaining ease of use. And the ability to carry this in your pocket is absolutely incredible. If you already have the iPhone X, you might not think it's that big of an upgrade. But if you're coming from the iPhone 8 or iPhone 7 or your iPhone 6, 5, 4, this is a huge jump.